we made this decision in the same manner. Let me emphasize that we do not prosecute by public pressure or by petition. We prosecute based on the facts of any given case, as well as the laws of the state of Florida. When they appointed us to this case less than 3 weeks ago, I want you to know that these two fine prosecutors, despite all that is on their plate already, handling all of the homicides in the 4th Judicial Circuit, supervising the other young lawyers who also handle homicides, they willingly took this case on and said, we will lead this effort to seek justice for Trayvon. We launched an intensive investigation building on all of the work that Sanford Police Department and the State Attorney's Office in Seminole County had already done. Unless you've ever been a law enforcement officer or a prosecutor handling a difficult homicide case, you cannot know what it's like to launch this type of investigation and come to the right conclusion. The Supreme Court has defined our role on numerous occasions as prosecutors that we are not only ministers of justice, we are seekers of the truth. And we stay true to that mission. Again, we prosecute on facts and the laws of the great and sovereign state of Florida, and that's the way it will be in this case. When we took our oath of office in 2009, we pledged not only to look out for our precious victims of all of our cases, but also to adhere to the rules of the criminal justice system and the rules of our Constitution and statutes that protect a defendant's rights as well. When we charge a person with a crime, we are equally committed to justice on their behalf as we are on our victims' behalf. So we are here to do that on behalf of our victim, Trayvon Martin, and on behalf of the person responsible for his death, George Zimmerman. We will continue to seek the truth throughout this case. Every single day, our prosecutors across this great country handle difficult cases, and they adhere to that same standard, a never-ending search for the truth and a quest to always do the right thing for the right reason. There is a reason cases are tried in a court of law, not in the court of the public, and not by the media, because details have to come out in excruciating and minute fashion. Detail by detail, bit of evidence by bit of evidence. And it's only then when the trier of fact, whether it's a judge or a jury, gets all of those details, that then the laws applied to that and a decision can be rendered. We will scrupulously adhere to our ethical obligations and to the rules of evidence in presenting this case that way. Today, we filed an information charging George Zimmerman with murder in the 2nd degree. A capias has been issued for his arrest. With the filing of that information and the issuance of a capias, he will have a right to appear in front of a magistrate in Seminole County within 24 hours of his arrest, and thus formal prosecution will begin. We thank all of those people across this country who have sent positive energy and prayers our way. We ask you to continue to pray for Trayvon's family as well as for our prosecution team. I want to especially thank Mr. Crump and Mr. Parks, who have stayed in touch daily with us on behalf of our victim's family. Remember, it is Trayvon's family that are our constitutional victims and who have the right to know the critical stages of these proceedings. I will entertain some questions, but remember, we have very strict rules of ethics, very strict rules of criminal procedure, and we will be adhering to those rules. I will confirm that Mr. Zimmerman is indeed in custody. I will not tell you where. That's for his safety as well as everyone else's safety. I'm sorry. We don't discuss the evidence in a case. It would be improper to do so. It was a full investigation, full facts and circumstances that lead us to any decision in any case. I'm sorry. Mr. Zimmerman turned himself in and was and by turning himself in was arrested on the capias that had already been issued. Well, it didn't take long. We have many complicated homicides that are thoroughly investigated. Remember, the prosecutor's burden under our Constitution is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. can tell you that this investigation was underway by both the Sanford Police Department and Norm Wolfinger's office. The investigation was in full mode, and the governor appointed us less than 3 weeks ago, and we took the work that they had done, which was significant. We carried on with that work, and we arrived at our decision approximately last week. And then, of course, following proper Florida law and procedure, we had to make sure we had everything in place to issue this capias and make this arrest. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. Well, that's what will be in court, detail by detail, piece of evidence by piece of evidence, factual evidence, physical evidence, testimonial evidence. That's why we try cases in a courtroom. I can tell you that in Seminole County, and I want to thank their chief judge, he was very kind in helping us start setting these procedures up last week. He informed us that they have a bond schedule there. And when a capias is issued, there is originally no bond, but that Mr. Zimmerman's lawyers will be entitled to request a bond, at which point a bond hearing will be held. Bond hearings are a common occurrence. Our lawyers handle them every day, and that's where that will be determined as to whether or not no bond, which is the bond set currently on the capias, will be changed by the court. Yes, ma'am. That would be commenting on the facts of the case, and we're not going to do that at this time. Yes, Catherine. Well, I don't believe that question is accurate in the sense that when you have a homicide, Florida's jury instructions even say that before you can reach a degree of homicide, you have to determine whether a person has committed an excusable homicide or a justifiable homicide. All murders are homicides, but not all homicides are murders. And Florida's law clearly says that if there is the affirmative defense of, for example, excusable homicide or justifiable homicide, that should be determined before you go to the degree of the crime. That's the process this case took. The only slight delay was the fact that the governor stepped in and appointed us to take this case over and handled it, and we did.
If they had conducted a full investigation, do you believe Sanford Police would have arrived at the same point?
We work together with our law enforcement officers here. As you see, I have my sheriff and our undersheriff here. We work with all of our law enforcement agencies where we try to work these cases together. Remember, prosecutors are law enforcement as well. And we work these cases with our investigating agencies, and we try to come to as many mutual decisions as we can. This case was in that process when the governor stepped in and appointed us to take it over. We have continued to work with the Sanford Police Department. We got full cooperation and all of those significant documents and records from Mr. Wolfinger's office, and then Bernie and John and their team took this over and did a lot more work, and we came to our conclusion based on the facts and Florida's law. Yes, sir.
Obviously, the maximum sentence for second-degree murder would be life in prison. Is it your desire, as the prosecutor of this case, to see him go to jail for life?
We don't make that determination at this time. What we are committed to do is get this case through the court system, and then, and if it goes to the trier of fact as the judge, or the trier of fact of the jury, once there is a decision, then we would concern ourselves with the sentence. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I have not personally been contacted. I do understand that he may have retained new counsel in the past couple of hours. If he did, I wouldn't be able to comment on it. I want you to know up front that one of the specific things we're not allowed to discuss are the statements of the defendant charged with the crime. And again, it's a constitutional protection that you all should be happy law enforcement affords every person charged with a crime. Yes, sir. I'm sorry? I will not comment on where Mr. Zimmerman is. I can tell you he is within the custody of law enforcement officers in the state of Florida, and he will be taken when it's appropriate for the appropriate appearance in front of a judge. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. speak for Angela Corey and my prosecution team. This is the conclusion that we came to based on our review of the facts and evidence. I'm not sure they were through with the entire investigation at the point Mr. Wolfinger recused himself from this case. We have to have a reasonable certainty of conviction before we file charges. Anytime there's an affirmative defense, and there are numerous affirmative defenses that can be asserted before the arrest, immediately after the arrest, during the trial. We've had them come up in the middle of trial, haven't we? My fellow prosecutors that sit here, we've all faced this before. For example, alibi is an affirmative defense. Sometimes that gets put on us in the middle of the trial. So an affirmative defense always makes a criminal prosecution more difficult. We do everything within our power to take the facts we have at hand and prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. Yes, sir. I'm going to be quite honest with you, and I have some people who have lived through our justice system here, and they are among the finest people in Jacksonville, Florida. They represent but a small sample of the people who know that those of us in law enforcement are committed to justice for every race, every gender, every person of any persuasion whatsoever. They are our victims. We only know one category as prosecutors, and that's a V. It's not a B, it's not a W, it's not an H, it's V for victim. That's who we work tirelessly for. And that's all we know is justice for our victims. And we still have to maintain the constitutional rights. Remember our role, ministers of justice. Anytime we take over a case, even from each other, we sometimes re-interview, we thoroughly go through the reports, we try to gather more evidence. A lot of the witnesses had already made statements in public even before we took over this case. So a thorough review of all of the statements that were made was done. And I can tell you, I've got the finest prosecution team ever. I know every boss feels that way, but these people have the best experience you can ask for. I'm sorry, and I'll get to you in just 1 second. I'm sorry, yes, ma'am? Florida is a full discovery state, and when and if the defense requests participation in the discovery process, the witness list will be released at that time. Hold on 1 second. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I thought I articulated very clearly that we don't discuss the facts of the case, and that's for a reason. We're law enforcement. This is the criminal justice system. People's rights have to be protected, and it's designed a certain way, not only under the Constitution of the United States and the state of Florida. We have rules of criminal procedure, Florida statutes, and rules of ethics. So much information got released on this case that never should have been released. We have to protect this investigation and this prosecution for Trayvon, for his family, and for George Zimmerman, and that's what we will continue to do. I did not, Catherine. We don't talk to any defendant who's represented by counsel unless he waives his right to counsel. We never even had to address that situation.
Yesterday, representing Mr. Zimmerman, or at least speaking for him, said they had refused themselves because they hadn't been in contact with him. Can you shed any light at all on how Mr. Zimmerman came to turn himself in?
I cannot. It's a coordinated process, and law enforcement has had this under control since we've gotten this case. And I know there was a lot of speculation about, oh my goodness, does law enforcement know where he is? Do we have this under control? This is what we do every single day on behalf of our community. It's what FDLE does every single day on behalf of the citizens of this great state. The governor and Pam Bondi put as much or as many resources as they could on this case. And I don't think that there was ever a concern that if the decision was made to charge Mr. Zimmerman, that it would be made